Hunter Biden walked into court this morning thinking it was fait accompli. This was easy. This was just a sort of an open and shut. It's done. He'd be walking out with a plea deal. The deal, he would be spared jail time for illegal possession of a gun in exchange for pleading guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges. But that is not what happened. In a move that clearly stunned both the Biden team and prosecutors, the judge called the deal into question, even saying, well, is it even constitutional? Now, CNN was inside the courtroom during the hearing. Biden was seen looking down as a prosecutor was detailing his personal struggles, his earnings, his tax troubles. But then things went south and the deal started to collapse. And at that point, it became clear that Biden was blindsided. He appeared agitated and worried, according to our reporters who saw him in the room. His brow furrowed as he huddled with his lawyers. How in the world did it get to this point? When you walk into a room, this is when everything's already done and agreed to. And this is just, it's just this pushing paper. But that's not what happened. How did Hunter Biden and the DOJ not see this coming? Not foresee that a judge could have serious questions about the deal? And Republicans on Capitol Hill are having a field day with this stunning development, further fueling the conspiracy theories they have about the DOJ being biased and working for the Biden White House.
It collapsed because it was a sweetheart deal from a family that was being protected. Hunter Biden being the main character.
Hunter Biden is getting a sweetheart deal that no other American who wasn't rich and had a father as the president would ever get, ever.
If you believe the whistleblowers and what they're saying, no, this was a sweetheart deal. It was corrupt in terms of how it was handled.
Well, this comes as there are growing calls from Republicans to begin impeachment proceedings against President Biden himself.
Do you think the president will definitely be impeached?
We'll wait on the evidence, but it's looking that way. It's not looking good for the president.
But
Mr.
this is
Speaker,
rising to the level of impeachment inquiry.
Sarah Murray is out front live in Washington. Sarah, this is, as I said, you go in fait accompli, open and shut, and wow, what a debacle. What happens now?
I mean, Aaron, it was quite a day of twists and turns in this courtroom. As you said, very unusual for something like this to happen when they go in with a plea agreement. But the judge made clear that she wants more information about sort of the legal structure of this agreement. And she also wants to be very clear on what exactly Hunter's plea bargain would include. She's giving both sides 30 days to brief her on some of the issues she still has surrounding this deal. But this was clearly not the day in court that any of the parties were expecting.
Tumultuous day in federal court. Hunter Biden left with no plea deal after a federal judge said she was not ready to accept it. President Joe Biden's son arrived at federal court today prepared to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges and to strike a deal to avoid a felony gun charge. After a 5-year Justice Department probe that Hunter Biden once predicted he would emerge from unscathed.
I am absolutely certain, 100% certain, that at the end of the investigation that I will be cleared of any wrongdoing.
Instead, Judge Mary Ellen Noroika, a Trump appointee, wanted to know if the investigation was over. Prosecutors told her it was ongoing. Then the two sides could not agree if Hunter Biden was at risk of additional charges if he took this deal. With that, the deal was derailed. Eventually, Hunter Biden's team agreed he was not shielded from further charges, and the deal seemed, for a moment, back on track. But then the judge raised questions about the gun deal. Is this even constitutional, she asked, and she said she was not ready to sign off on the deal. The hearing ended with Hunter Biden, in a pro forma move, pleading not guilty. The courtroom drama providing another opening for Republican lawmakers who slammed the plea agreement.
At least there's some scrutiny going on. The plea deal we saw as it started was garbage.
Hunter Biden is getting a sweetheart deal that no other American who wasn't rich and had a father as the president would ever get, ever.
Republicans already seeking more information about the Hunter Biden probe after 2 IRS whistleblowers who worked on the case claimed there was political interference, dating back to the Trump administration and continuing under the Biden administration.
There should not be a 2-track justice system depending on who you are and who you're connected to.
The White House today reiterating that the president stands by his son, but played no role in the investigation.
This case was handled independently, as all of you know, by the Justice Department under the leadership of a prosecutor appointed by the former president, President Trump.
The plea deal was set to cover Hunter Biden's tax transgressions over a 5-year span, his drug issues, and his firearm possession charge. Prosecutors say Hunter Biden failed to pay between $1.1 and $1.5 million in federal taxes. And they highlighted his substantial income from Ukrainian and Chinese energy companies, saying he did in fact have the funds available to pay his taxes in certain years, but he failed to do so. Instead, prosecutors say he spent wildly on personal luxuries and expenses.
Now, our team in the courtroom today said the judge did address Hunter Biden at the end of this wild hearing, acknowledging, I know you wanted to resolve this, saying I'm sorry, but saying that she has to be careful in her handling of this. So it's very clear, Aaron, at least for now, Hunter Biden's legal woes are certainly not over, and neither are his political woes.
No, absolutely. All right, Sarah, thank you very much. And as Sarah's laid all that out, let's bring in Ryan Goodman now, of course, former special counsel of the Defense Department, and he's with Just Security now. Laura Coates, former federal prosecutor, our chief legal analyst, and the former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. So thanks very much to all of you. Let me just start, Laura, with what happened today. As I said, you go in, usually these are sort of, rubber stamp moments. At least that's the perception. Everyone's got their T's crossed and their I's dotted. Have you ever seen a plea deal like this just fall apart so spectacularly in the way it did?
In this way, absolutely not. In fact, it's so common to have plea colloquies, that's the name of it. When you go through essentially what the defendant is giving up, you ensure that the person is fully aware and knowledgeable about what they are signing off on. And something of a high profile matter, let alone one that's very low profile, the attorneys go to great lengths to make sure that this plea colloquy moment goes very smoothly. Why? To avoid a debacle such as this. But it seems very clear that for the judge's perspective, it was not entirely clear that the one thing that really was the end-all be-all for a case like this in part, which is, would this cover any future prosecution? Did he essentially have a kind of immunity in which he would not be privy to prosecution in the future? The full scope of the plea was not articulated in a clear enough way for the judge to note. And one more additional point here, Aaron. Normally, a judge is not involved in what's called a pre-indictment diversionary program where the government essentially says, look, you stay on the up and up, you agree to our terms, and we're not going to actually charge you with a crime, but we reserve the right to do so. In this instance, it appears they were asking for the judge to sign off on that in advance and essentially be a part of the group that decides whether or not Hunter Biden actually has abided by those terms. That's the irregularity that she was actually pointing to.
Right.
This entire thing was absurd.
All right, so I want to ask more about this issue of the further investigations in a moment. But Ryan, she also raised, the judge, this issue of constitutionality, asking whether the government or the agreement about Hunter Biden's gun offense was even constitutional, right? This is a very basic, specific, was this the right article that she could oversee? Was she right to raise that concern?
Absolutely. There does seem to be, as Laura just described it, an irregularity in this agreement. I call it an anomaly in a sense, same idea, which is that the diversionary program is to set Hunter Biden up, as any defendant would be, into something like a rehabilitation program. But if he breaks the conditions for being in that program, then it could trigger a re-prosecution in which he could be then sentenced. But that is an executive branch decision. It's a prosecutorial decision. What did the agreement say? It said that it would be up to the judge to make that decision. And she's saying, wait a minute, this is a separation of powers issue. I don't know that this is constitutional to put me in that role.
Which is amazing if it seems so clear to so many that this was an issue, that they would walk in again into that room, Laura, and not have seen it themselves. I mean, I don't know whether lazy is the right word. I don't know what happened, but it seems bizarre to me. Yeah. Congressman, Republicans have been making the argument that this plea deal was unfair. And now the fact that it's unraveling so spectacularly, they are seizing on that to make their point, calling it a sweetheart deal that wouldn't be available to other people, and saying that's why it unraveled. Does the collapse of the agreement give more fuel to that Republican fire?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely gives them more fuel. And I think it's unfortunate because the conspiracies that have come out of some of my former colleagues about the DOJ and weaponizing the DOJ is ironic, particularly because the former president of the United States talks constantly about weaponizing the DOJ for his own ends. He tried to fire the acting attorney general to put in his guy that's going to go in and question the election. So, yeah, I do think this definitely will help. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily going to turn any minds in the middle or any, currently Democrats, but I think it will kind of embolden their argument. You already hear it. They're all saying sweetheart deals. Here's a little inside thing. we get all these like words that work, these little things we have to say. So evidently whoever was sending out the talking points underlined sweetheart deal. It must poll well.
Right. Well, and Laura, now the point you raise about other investigations into Hunter Biden and what role they played here. I mean, part of the reason this collapsed in part was because federal prosecutors said, they confirmed when she asked, is this investigation over? They couldn't say it was over, right? They were saying it remains ongoing, which suggests that there could be other prosecution possible on other issues. Maybe not. Who knows? Investigation's still ongoing. What kind of offenses are we talking about here?
Well, that's the bizarre aspect of this, that you would not have contemplated and negotiated a full 360 deal that essentially said, look, this is going to close this matter and any other matters, although a prosecutor does not have to give you a lifetime of immunity, so to speak, and say, because you have a plea in one context, you will never be prosecuted in the future for any other offense that might either be arising out of this claim, which would be abnormal, or one that you might otherwise commit. And so there is this irregularity.
That would be a sweetheart deal.
It would be a sweetheart deal. But let me just say on that very point, Aaron, when I hear all the political talking points, it seems to suggest that this judge was somehow trying to throw the book at the prosecution because she didn't approve of the leniency involved in the actual deal. No, she was concerned about separation of powers and having a role almost as a third party to an agreement between the prosecution and the defense. And she wanted to understand, it seems to be, that as any other defendant ought to have the right to know, what are you signing up for? You are giving up an enormous amount of rights when you say you're going to plead guilty. You don't have the same appellate rights. You don't have a jury of your peers. And so to suggest that somehow this judge was giving an attaboy to the talking points that say, hey, see, she also does not like the Hunter Biden deal, that's not what actually the discussion really was about.
So, Ryan, what do you think these other offenses we're talking about here? Obviously, the broader context, anybody watching is well aware. There's a lot swirling around, right? The payments from Burisma and the allegations from the chief, all of that. CNN's done extensive reporting on that as well. What are we talking about? Other investigations?
Difficult to know, but the judge did speculate in open court that it could be that Hunter Biden was acting as an unregistered agent of a foreign actor or a foreign power. That could be a foreign party, or it could be a foreign government. And that is something that could be part of an ongoing investigation that's not related to tax crimes, it's not related to gun crimes, and it's not related to drug crimes. It seems highly plausible that that might be some kind of issue that's still under investigation by the Justice Department, and they seem to be saying that there clearly is something there.
And of course, Congressman, that's what leads to the continued drumbeat about the president. Now, the White House calls this entire case a personal matter. President Biden stayed out of public view today. But obviously, these developments on Hunter Biden come as Republicans have been escalating threats to impeach President Biden. So does the collapse of this deal, do you think it moves the needle for moderate Republicans who have been loath to go along with that rhetoric so far to now jump on board?
So it gives them an excuse. So when you're in that, I was in that position many times as kind of the, the moderate, I guess, and the temptation is to look for a reason to say, hey, I'm still a reasonable person. However, this is now causing me to reconsider. This can give ammo to that. I mean, the bigger picture is, look, this is not a case against Joe Biden. This is a case against his son.
Right.
There's accusations surrounded by the president, but no more. And an impeachment inquiry is not just a fact-finding mission. It is a serious thing. But I said back in January that they would impeach Joe Biden simply because the pressure is going to be so great on other news networks and in the base to do it. So I think they're going to find any excuse to get there. I certainly hope some of my former colleagues that are more sane and reasonable actually understand that this is really bad for the country.
All right. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.